Along the Line is proudly presented by Northwest Regional Airport Terrace Kitimat, the most reliable airport in the Northwest. 7 flights daily direct to Vancouver.
Thanks for joining us as we take a trip along the line. This spring, CKPG News traveled the highway to Kitimat to find the stories of some impacted by the LNG development. Last fall, a final investment decision was made by LNG Canada. Since that time, construction has begun on a $6.2 billion pipeline, mostly centered on the Highway 16 corridor from Dawson Creek to Kitimat, ending in a $40 billion facility that will see liquefied natural gas shipped overseas to Asia. Originating near Dawson Creek, 670 kilometers of pipeline will be built, some of it close to communities, some of it further away. And the sheer volume of those working on the project will see a boost in population and economics. We begin with a visit to the Gittimton Checkpoint on the Wet'suwet'en Territory, southwest of Houston, BC. 44 kilometers down the Morris River Forest Service Road lies Molly Wickham's camp.
That's the water that feeds all our territories.
Wickham and her group were featured in international media back in early 2019 when they blocked the road to Coastal GasLink crews who were beginning site prep. Images of the day an injunction was enforced by police were shared through the world, putting the fight against the LNG development in northeast BC on the map.
We can't practice our culture the way that we're meant to do. We can't live out on the territory and sustain ourselves because of the impacts of this project.
We spent an afternoon with Wickham and others living at the camp, which lies at a creek flowing into the Wasinqua or Morris River. With drinkable water year-round, the area is traditionally a gathering place, which became a battleground on that freezing day in January.
It's very important for Wet'suwet'en people to maintain control and access over our territories. Because of the destruction and because of the cumulative impacts that are happening to the territory, especially with this project, CGL, that's pushing its way through and attempting to destroy the little that we have left. It's important and critical that we have a presence on the territory, that we're occupying our territory, and that we know exactly what's happening and that we are able to control what's happening on the territory. Here we're going to make a tire swing.
The group continues to rebuild the camp under the watchful eye of RCMP and security presence. Further down the road at a river crossing lies the Unistoten Healing Center, built a decade ago.
Over 10 years ago, we built a cabin strategically because Enbridge was trying to put a project through here which they did not have our consent, and we didn't want to run the risk of losing this one and only river that you can drink from and that our salmon spawn in. So we took measures, and my client made a choice because we were already planning to build a cabin, decided to put that cabin here.
This has black bordering and red bordering, which was the colors of our warriors that protected the territory.
The dispute is a larger one, as these hereditary chiefs are in disagreement with elected ones, those who are part of the First Nations along the line signing on as partners in the massive development.
Yeah, so the pipeline itself is 48-inch diameter.
Pipeline builder TransCanada, who operates Coastal GasLink, has been working with First Nations and community groups for the past 6 years.
We know that we may not have 100% support on any project in Canada. We live in a democratic society and totally respect the right for peaceful, lawful protest. That being said, we do have unprecedented support for this project.
With 20 project agreements with First Nations along the line, a $3 million investment into training opportunities for youth has already been made.
We also have support from many community leaders across the north who want to see more opportunities for this region. It includes support in many cases of hereditary leadership and elders from First Nations communities as well. One thing that they've told us quite clearly is they want to see opportunities for young people.
Of course, we have individuals who are leaders of communities and that are band council chiefs who are pro-pipeline because they're the ones that are benefiting and seeing money come into the communities. And so it's designed to be that way because our communities need economic help. They feel like they can't do it on their own, and they've been so oppressed for so long that they're willing to, to take whatever they can for their community members.
The fear of more development continues to loom for those who want to protect their land.
I'm not here for me, and when I do have grandchildren, they're grown up, and they're going to ask me about this because this is part of history. They're going to ask you questions. What did you do to try and stop this? What did you do to try and stop them from destroying our way of life? And if it's a success story, I'm going to be happy to be telling my story. I did everything I could, just the way my grandparents and grandparents did it, so I can enjoy the benefits of this clean drinking water and the land that's still intact.
And it's not just one pipeline. We know that there are many pipelines. At one time, there was 13 pipelines that were slated to go through our territory, and they called it an energy corridor. So we know that the impacts of this project aren't just going to be the impacts of one pipeline. We know that once this goes through, if we allow it to go through, that there's many more to follow. Are you going to get it on Mommy?
Yeah, I'm gonna get it on you.
Oh no!
Okay. There's a vastly different perspective along the line in the small coastal First Nations community of Haisla. Chief Crystal Smith has long been a proponent of the LNG project and is looking forward to better times for her small community, which once relied on fishing and forestry.
We're so used to managing poverty and all the social aspects that come with poverty. Alcoholism, suicides. Where are you going? Oh, nice.
We met Smith on the Haisla Nation, 10 kilometers south of Kitimat, and during the interview had a chance meeting on the road with her grandson. Her grandson's future is just one of the reasons she is behind the LNG Canada project.
Can you say hi?
Since the beginnings of the pipeline and terminal project, First Nations communities like Smith's have had a seat at the table, for the first time feeling as if their voices and opinions on the project are being heard.
This industry has brought a meaningful participation to our community. I always revert back to our history where, if you know Kitimat, we're not new to industrial development. What we are new to and what Haisla is new to is the participation within that development. So they changed how business is done with First Nations communities, specifically LNG Canada.
I think it starts with a mindset. I think it really starts with a mindset that we want to do things differently. I think in this industry, we've seen projects come and go that didn't put enough time and attention into the interests of local people and First Nations. And so right from the very beginning, we said we're going to do this differently because we know how important it is to have them supportive of what it is we want to do.
The sentiment felt by other First Nations who've joined together to create the First Nations LNG Alliance. Smith has emerged as one of the main spokespeople. Together, the group is working with other First Nations to voice their support for the project and ensure training for those who want to work.
Are those jobs relating to careers? So that's our huge focus right now, and that's our huge push for not only for our people, but for people in First Nations communities in northern BC. How do we maximize this benefit as First Nations people, and how do we develop careers so that this project has a lasting impact on all of our people?
Looking ahead, Smith and others hope this development is the change needed to pull their First Nations out of poverty.
We're not restricted to social programming anymore. So when it means a different quality of life, impacting my daughter's generation, my grandson's generation, we're seeing those and we're feeling those. That is why we support this industry. There you go. I'll see you later.
Still to come, more from Kitimat as we hear from an electrician who is standing up for the North and the Kitimat mayor himself on how the community is preparing for the massive terminal build.
Along the Line is proudly presented by Northwest Regional Airport Terrace Kitimat, the most reliable airport in the Northwest. 7 flights daily direct to Vancouver.
Our trip along the line continues in the community of Kitimat, where the LNG terminal will be built.
Ready to go for a drive?
It's an overcast morning in the small coastal community as we stop by Red Seal electrician David Johnston's house. He, along with dog Boss, prepare to hand out signs. Johnston has put his life savings into Standing Up for the North, a group that advocates for industry growth in a number of communities in northern BC. The group stems from a pro-LNG sentiment.
This being the biggest infrastructure project in the history of Canada, the opportunities that it's going to create, not just for our town, for the region and for the province and for Canada, are unparalleled with anything that's ever happened here before.
80 or 90 people with hands-on tools are going to build this wharf.
Johnston is among this crowd of locals in Kitimat who are updated every 6 months on the pipeline and terminal build through a public meeting. It's a chance for residents to get updates on the timeline and ask any questions.
If you saw that, it was unbelievable. Fantastic.
Meetings like this one are the way LNG Canada and its partners have kept in touch. Communication has been key from the very beginning of the project.
We've got the lounge area.
We had the opportunity to visit the head office of LNG Canada near Kitimat to hear more.
Heisler Bridge right there. So it wasn't us coming in and saying to the community, this is how we're going to interact with you. We said, how would you like us to interact with you? Instead of forcing principles or ways of working that may not work for Kitimat, may not work for the Heisler, may not work for others. So we said, come together, let's really workshop this, you tell us. And so we started with asking the question of you tell us. It changes the paradigm of how you can approach a project.
Massive footprint. There's no question this terminal build will impact Kitimat moving forward. Mayor Philip Germuth confirms LNG Canada has taken the time to cultivate a working relationship with the district and its 8,500 residents. The company's Hire Local First policy has many already hard at work doing site prep at what used to be a methane plant.
Excellent. Okay. We have a very good relationship. You know, it's built on trust. They've been really good to us since day one. You know, there's never been a time when they've put out something that wasn't true. They're very cautious about what they say. They really are professional, I must admit. And when it comes to, you know, getting project approval, I think they've clearly set a new standard in how to go about consulting communities and building support for the project.
One of the main concerns for the small community was being able to handle the influx of people. LNG Canada plans to support this with on-site accommodation.
So the workforce is anywhere from 4,500 to 7,000, so we could easily be very close to double.
District of Kitimat staff have spent time and money preparing for the $40 billion build over the next 5 years.
We've spent a lot of money hiring extra staff. You know, we wanted to also make sure that community safety wasn't going to be compromised in any way. So we hired extra police force. You know, we have extra firefighters coming in this year in the budget. So we wanted to do our part to make sure that, number one, we weren't delaying projects. Number two, community safety was a priority.
From scholarships to education programming, LNG Canada has heavily invested into the community of Kitimat, and the economic spin-off is expected to ripple through the province and even the nation.
Perhaps you're going to see some people in Prince George say, hey, I'm going to go work on LNG Canada. That's first stop. Second stop is local contracting. At LNG Canada, we have a commitment, as does JFJV, to not only hire local first, but also to look at what we can leverage from local contractors. So there's a huge database that a lot of local contractors have put their information in, so that when we're looking for companies that can do specific pieces of work, we can look locally. So again, I think Prince George, you'll have a lot of companies that are already in that database, that already are becoming known, so that when the opportunities come up, they can be a part of that.
The amount of workforce needed in Kitimat itself with the LNG Canada plus the pipeline, that's a large number. We have committed that it's Indigenous and local workers first on this project, absolutely. Then we look to the rest of the province, and then the rest of Canada, I think, will be a part of this project.
While there is plenty of support for the pipeline and terminal build in Kitimat, some are voicing their concerns about environmental impacts.
Now we're going to have LNG Canada putting out large amounts of nitrogen oxide pollution.
Yeah, the fisheries.
We took a walk with Greg Knox in Terrace along the Skeena River. Knox is the CEO of the Skeena Wild Conservation Foundation, a group who works to protect salmon and waterways in northwestern BC.
Our concerns around LNG have included the air pollution, so both the health impacts, the acid rain impacts on our waterways and lakes, and some of the impacts from the project footprints themselves on the estuaries.
Oh, really? Specific concerns surrounding the Kitimat Terrace airshed from Knox stem the way gas will be processed at the Kitimat LNG plant.
The biggest problem we have is the government allowed them to burn the gas, burn a portion of the gas to produce the electricity they require to run the refrigeration and compression units that liquefies the gas. That requires a huge amount of energy. And when you burn that amount of natural gas, you create huge amounts of nitrogen oxides, which are both a health pollutant and cause acid rain.
And according to Knox, there are some who are against the project and are afraid to speak out now that momentum is building.
I think there's a real concern amongst people. They're afraid to express their concerns because there's been so much work done to promote LNG and this project in particular that people just don't feel safe kind of coming out and talking about the issues.
Coming up, our trip along the line continues as we move to Smithers, Houston, and Fraser Lake. Small communities looking to reap the economic rewards of the LNG development in their neighborhood.
Along the Line is proudly presented by Northwest Regional Airport Terrace Kitimat, the most reliable airport in the Northwest. 7 flights daily direct to Vancouver.
Moving along the line from the community of Kitimat to the community of Smithers. Smithers comes already with a strong economic base from tourism and government, but businesses there are already seeing an economic spin-off from the LNG pipeline build.
There will be other industries coming on, and this will be the start of more LNG lines.
It's a busy morning for Fred Wilson, cleaning and preparing vehicles at his truck rental shop in Smithers. In the first part of 2019, pipeline supplier Coastal GasLink has become Wilson's main client.
There's been a lot of businesses that have become busier. They've hired on more staff. The economic projection here is good, and we're seeing it. I'm starting to see it in the moving van rentals. I'm starting to see families move to town because they've landed a job with a certain company, and that's because of the LNG climate. We're starting to see a real rush, and we're seeing that all along the line. Prince George, Burns Lake, Smithers, Terrace, and Kitimat.
It's not just communities like Smithers who stand to benefit economically from the pipeline build. Further east, the District of Houston is poised to take advantage of more people moving up and down the Highway 16 West corridor.
Restaurants opening up, clothing stores, you know, our plaza with the theater, a new grocery store, and it really provided an uptake in morale in the community. And I think people see investment from LNG and other companies, and they get a little more confidence in these small rural communities.
We have some local contractors that are already working with the pipeline companies in clearing and doing preparation. We had an economic summit here in February in which many of our businesses engaged with the different prime and subcontractors at that time.
And moving even further east along the line, the small community of Fraser Lake, working to support those who will be housed at a construction camp nearby.
We have a lot of things in the works, so we don't know exactly what we're going to have to do for them or what is needed yet, but we're hoping that it will all come together shortly because this is starting really soon.
The construction camp will soon be built on this site near the tiny community of Lejac at Nadle-Wuten. While the population will flow at full capacity, it will house around 700 people.
Our economic development officer, Dave Christie, he's doing an awesome job making sure that all of the community is prepared and the businesses. So a lot of Chamber of Commerce meetings around this right now and making sure that the businesses are really ready to go and that the community members are part of this as well. So there'll be a lot of infrastructure and development around social things. So we'll have different activities and different events going on the Sundays that the camp workers are off.
So those sites, we have worked with communities on finding locations that really made sense. So we have in total 14 camps across the whole project area, but they won't be in use all at the same time. The workforce moves from camp to camp depending on the season and where the work is going to be.
While opinion along the line remains divided, one certainty we found is the impacts that will be felt in northern BC for the years to come.
Along the Line is proudly presented by Northwest Regional Airport Terrace Kitimat, the most reliable airport in the Northwest. 7 flights daily direct to Vancouver.